Hello, my name is Naaman Hernandez. Today we're going to talk about culture conflict theory. Now, for this video, what we're going to do is we're going to give a brief summary of what culture conflict theory is, give some examples, what are the causes, etc. Now, let's start off with the introduction. Now, what is cultural conflict theory? Cultural conflict theory, also known as cultural deviance theory, is a theory that suggests the primary cause for criminality is the collision of different values from differently socialized groups. Now, cultural conflict theory can be difficult to explain, but to put it simple as possible, cultural conflict theory is pretty much the people that surrounds your community that taught you what are the values and what is part of the culture for said community. Now, how is this related to criminology? Well, if we look at group 1, let's say that there's a value that's part of their culture and it is viewed positively. But in group 2's perspective, it is viewed negatively. And a good example I could put this up to is graffiti. Now, let's say group 1 is all in for graffiti. It shows creativity. It shows that people can become creative, spread a message, etc. But to group 2, it looks like an act of vandalism. And what does that create? Conflict between both of them. Now, with this in mind, this can influence your perspective and shape your values. Now, how is this related to criminology? Well, let's say group 1 that there's something that is part of their culture that has been with them for as long as they can remember and is viewed positively to them. Now, in group 2, it could be viewed negatively and thus creating conflict. And a good example I can put in this is graffiti. Now, let's say group 1 is all in for graffiti. Graffiti is a way to spread the message, even though whether it be a political message or just a personal message or just any other message that can influence a person and is viewed positively. However, in group 2, it can be viewed negatively. Now, it can be viewed as an act of vandalism or just defamation of property, which in turn creates conflict. Now, what I find interesting about culture conflict theory is that there is many variables to culture conflict theory, like social economic environments, the types of people, etc., and how it is connected to 2 other theories, but more on that later. For now, we can continue on what types of cultural conflict is there. First, there is primary conflict and secondary conflict. Now, we are given a solid definition of what primary conflict and secondary conflict is inside the book Cultural Conflict and Crime, which was written by Thornstein Selling, who is an American criminologist that did a lot of things that contributed to criminology. Now, for what Selling describes primary conflict as is when a fundamental clash of cultures occur. He decides to use the example of an immigrant father who kills his daughter's lover in order to keep his family's honor intact. Now, what does this example mean? Now, the father could have come from a place that has strict traditions or a very strict culture, and the daughter brought her lover that has an entirely different background that's contrasting her dad's. Now, the father might have thought that this would have brought shame to his family or to his culture, so he opted to kill the lover. And this example that Selling provides can show how extreme the consequences can be if 2 cultures inevitably clash. Now, for the secondary conflict, the Selling says that the secondary conflict is when smaller cultures inside the primary culture begin to clash. Now, an example that Selling provides is gambling and prostitution, and the book provides a modern example of what secondary conflict is, which is the use of drugs. Inside the textbook, it does claim that in some parts of America, drug dealing is some form of business. However, those who are in charge, like Congress, police, etc., do find it negative, which then again causes a clash, and then boom, there is conflict. Now, I would like to add more to this, but sadly, I am running out of time. But for now, here is just a quick summary or recap of what cultural conflict is. Now, cultural conflict theory is a theory of if two cultures with opposing views or opposing perspectives get into a conflict, it would inevitably lead to crime. Now, there's a lot of variables that come to this, whether it be the economic state of like one community or how the people in one community or culture grew up. That being said, culture conflict theory also leads and ties to many other theories, like subculture theory, different perspective theory, and how it connects between strain theory and social organization theory.